Well, good morning, everybody. I know you're not used to seeing me on a Friday morning. We've had some interesting things. I went on vacation for a couple of weeks, and what happened was somehow we kind of misplaced this particular devotional that was supposed to be shown last week. So last week I told you that it was my last devotional from Philippians because that one had already been taped, and we bumped it back a week. But I'm actually going to go back and do this one because I think it's really important. It's one that's kind of near and dear to my heart. So I'm going to do one more from the book of Philippians. And this particular passage I want to talk to you about today includes what I believe is one of the most misquoted verses in the whole Bible. It's one of my pet peeves when people pick kind of sound bites out of the Bible. When they pick like a verse that just sounds good and they like those particular words, and so they take the words of a single verse and use the meaning that they've kind of implied to it. But somehow, if you take that verse in the context that it was written in, it has an altogether different meaning than what they're taking it to mean. That's the case with a verse that we're going to look at today. When we get to the end of this passage, we're going to see a verse just like that. Now, Paul has been talking about the gentleness that comes from the joy that we have in knowing Jesus, and the peace that we can have if we discipline ourselves to meditate on that joy and on those things of God and the things that are good and honorable and righteous. He talks about all of that and how as we focus our minds on those things, that it brings us a certain level of peace. Now, he turns to the idea of maintaining that joy and peace in any and every circumstance. And in this light, he thanks them for sending a gift to help support his ministry, but then he continues with a message about how, as much as he appreciates their gift, he doesn't necessarily need it because he has learned the secret of contentment. So I want to read you now from Philippians 4, verses 10 through 13. I rejoice greatly in the Lord that at last you renewed your concern for me. Indeed, you were concerned for me, but you had no opportunity to show it. Now, I'm not saying this because I am in need, for I have learned to be content, whatever the circumstance. I know what it is to be in need. I know what it is to have plenty. I have learned the secret of being content in any and every situation, whether well-fed or hungry, whether living in plenty or in want. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. So this passage is a passage about contentment. And I like to start by asking you to meditate on something. Think about the idea, because I think it's important for us to understand this. What does it take for you to be content in your life? Where does your contentment lie? Maybe contentment for you has something to do with a certain standard of living, a certain level of material comfort. Maybe you can be content when you have certain things around you or certain comforts that you desire. Or perhaps it's more aligned with peace of mind or lack of stress. Or maybe it has more to do with relationships and support from family and friends. Whatever it is, imagine the Philippian church. Because all of those things were taken away from them. Everything. So, Paul's words here are meant to give them comfort. He's actually modeling a contentment for them that he wants them to have. Because of the things he has taught them, the gentleness and the peace that they get from the joy of knowing Christ, he says, you can be content like me in the same way. Be content for the same reasons. And then there comes the verse that we always pull out of context. The verse that I just feel we misunderstand. He says, I can do all things through Christ who gives me strength. I can do all things through Christ who gives me strength. Now that's the translation that we're most familiar with. And that's the translation that we use as a motivational mantra. We repeat it over and over to encourage ourselves. It's something that we put on plaques and hang it on the wall, and we see it in places. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. It gives us the idea that with Christ's help, we can go to greater heights of success and accomplishment. We can climb mountains. We can achieve the greatest victories in this way. The NIV, the New International Version, actually gets it right by translating it this way. They say, I can do all this through him who gives me strength. You see, by using the word this, he connects it back to what he was just saying. All those things I just talked about. I can be hungry, or I can be well fed. I can be rich, or I can be poor. I can be healthy, or I can be ill. I can be anything. I can do all of this through Christ who strengthens me. In other words, I can be content in any and every circumstance because of the strength I get from knowing Christ. Paul has known every kind of difficulty in life. He's gone through every possible circumstance in life: wealth and poverty, health and illness, praise and ridicule, peace and persecution. He's done it all. And he's saying he can be content. He can get through it. He can continue to have joy and peace in those situations simply because Christ gives him strength. He doesn't have to climb Mount Everest. He doesn't have to achieve the greatest victory. What he needs to be is faithful and content through any and every circumstance. So I would just close by asking you today, are you content? In this moment, right in this time, are you content with your life, with your circumstance, with what's happening around you? Ask yourself, where does your contentment come from? What are the things that cause you to lack or to lose contentment? These are important questions. Because if we're not content, we don't have peace. If we don't have peace, we don't have joy. If we don't have joy, we don't have the gentleness that God wants us to have in our lives. So meditate today on what it means to have the joy of knowing Jesus, and see if you can't find the contentment that he has promised through the strength that comes in Jesus Christ. God bless you all, and I'll see you next week to start maybe a new series and move on to something different now that we finish Philippians. See you next week.